I haven't talked about this night with anyone. Not my girlfriend, not my closest friends, not even my dad. And we talk about everything. But it's been clawing at the back of my brain for over a year, like something that didn't want to be forgotten. It started the way a lot of bad stories do. Hungover, half-dressed, and confused. I woke up in someone else's bed with my mouth dry as chalk and a thudding in my skull like someone was knocking on it from the inside. Pale sunlight filtered in through blinds. A sweatshirt I didn't recognize lay crumpled on the floor. I sat up slowly, trying to piece together the night before. Saturday. Drinks at Logan's place, shots at that dive near campus. And then blank. Then I heard breathing next to me. My heart jumped, but when I turned, relief hit me like a warm towel. It was Jules, one of my friends. No drama, no weirdness, just a blurry night that ended here. She was curled up under the covers, still out cold. She looked peaceful. I figured I should sneak out, but as I leaned forward to grab my shoe, pain exploded through my foot. I yelped and nearly fell off the bed. Jules stirred. "You good?" she mumbled, squinting at me. "Yeah, I mean no. My foot, it's like burning." I pulled off the sneaker I'd halfway slipped on, and my stomach dropped. My big toe was twice its normal size, purplish, angry, and leaking something yellow. The skin was hot to the touch. Then I remembered. I'd had part of the nail removed after a soccer injury. The campus doc told me to stay off it for a few days, but last night I was sprinting across downtown like a moron, jumping curbs, probably slammed it into something, and of course I was too drunk to feel it at the time. "You should get that looked at," Jules said, sitting up. "That looks infected." I brushed it off. "I'll clean it up at home. Thanks for the couch. Bed." I limped out, barely making it the 1.5 miles to the house I shared with 3 other guys. I threw some ibuprofen in my mouth and washed it down with Gatorade and half a beer. Typical college triage. By nightfall, the pain was worse. The swelling had crawled halfway up my foot. Then a friend of ours, Elena, pre-med, smart as hell, dropped by for movie night and took one look at me hobbling around the kitchen. "What the hell is going on with your leg?" she said, crouching to inspect it. I shrugged. "Just a cut. Got infected, maybe." "Those red lines going up your calf, that's called lymphangitis, blood poisoning. You could go septic." She had her keys out before I could argue. By 9 p.m., I was in the ER at County General. Elena dropped me off at the front since she had to head to a study session, but she made me promise to text her updates. The ER was a zoo. Screaming kid, old man vomiting, a woman in handcuffs flanked by 2 cops. It smelled like antiseptic and something metallic, probably blood. I was taken back to a shared room fairly quickly, more luck than merit. I guess they didn't want someone with possible sepsis sitting in the lobby. There was a thin curtain between me and whoever was in the other bed. I caught glimpses. A man, pale and motionless. His arms lay stiff at his sides. A woman sat beside him, maybe mid-60s, with long gray-streaked hair that looked like it hadn't been brushed in days. She stared straight ahead, unmoving. Standing near them were a tall nurse, a paramedic, and a police officer. The cop was doing the talking. "Ma'am," he said, "we need you to tell us what your husband took. If we know what it was, we might be able to help." She didn't answer, didn't blink. "Ma'am," the cop repeated, a little sharper now. "We're not trying to arrest you, but if you keep withholding information, we'll have no choice." Still no reaction, just that vacant stare. Then my nurse came in. Her badge said, "Rita." "Okay, infection boy," she said with a tired smile. "Let's get you patched up before your foot decides to fall off." I smiled weakly. She hooked up an IV and told me she'd be back to drain the toe once the anesthetic kicked in. Before she left, she glanced at the woman through the curtain and leaned in. Just ignore them if you can. It's been a weird night. 15 minutes passed. I kept hearing murmurs from the other side of the curtain, though the man never spoke. Then something changed. I looked toward the hall and saw another cop talking to a priest. Not a chaplain, an actual priest. Black shirt, white collar. They exchanged a few words. Then the priest walked toward our room. I didn't know if it was for me or the other patient, but the air felt heavier. The priest nodded to me as he passed. He noticed my cross necklace and gave a polite smile before vanishing behind the curtain. Then I heard it. A hiss. Low at first, then louder, like steam escaping from a kettle. But it was the woman. Then her voice, sharp, guttural, in a language I didn't understand. The priest responded calmly, in Latin. I recognized some words from childhood mass. Damnatus, libera. The woman answered back in the same language, furious, spitting syllables like venom. The curtain trembled slightly, as if someone had brushed it from the other side. My foot throbbed, but I barely noticed. I was paralyzed. Then came a smell, sharp, sulphurous, like burnt hair and old pennies. Rita returned, looked around, and said nothing. She focused on my foot, checking the numbness. "Tell me if this hurts," she said, raising a scalpel. I nodded, unable to speak. I turned my head to avoid watching the cut, but turned toward the curtain instead, and saw her. The woman was staring directly at me, her head tilted, her eyes too wide as if she didn't need to blink. I tried to look away, but I froze, and then I saw something else. Not out there, inside. A vision. I was standing in the ER, holding Rita's scalpel. Her back was to me. I lifted it. My hand plunged it into her neck over and over. Blood sprayed. Her mouth opened in shock. "No!" I screamed. I was back. The vision vanished. Rita had jumped back, scalpel still in hand. "You okay?" she asked, concerned. I think so," I whispered. "Just a weird head rush." She nodded, but kept her eyes on me. "You sure you didn't take anything else tonight?" I shook my head. Rita finished the procedure quickly and left me to rest. They wheeled the man out next, covered in a sheet. The priest and the cop stayed behind the curtain with the woman. Then I heard the priest's voice again, calm, software. Then her voice, louder now, but different. She laughed, a dry, hacking sound like someone trying to remember how to do it. And then she said, "Your brother forgives you, Alex." I went still. My brother, Nate, died 2 years ago. He overdosed. I was supposed to pick him up from rehab and never showed. Never forgave myself. And nobody in that room had said my name aloud. I looked toward the curtain. She was still there, still smiling. The priest came out a moment later, face pale, hands slightly trembling. He looked at me and said, "You're safe now. She won't follow." No one else acknowledged what had happened. They moved me to another room shortly after. I left the hospital the next morning. My infection cleared up, but nothing else ever did. I started having dreams, her face in the dark, her voice in my head, sometimes in English, sometimes not. "You were marked, Alex, but now she knows your name." I started sleeping with lights on, stopped wearing my cross, started seeing shadows in mirrors that didn't belong. I don't know what I saw in room 209. I don't know what she was or how she knew what she knew. But I know this. Whatever left with me that night hasn't left me alone since. Back in the early 2000s, I worked at a dying video rental store tucked between a payday loan shop and a shuttered laundromat. The kind of place that still had a "Be Kind Rewind" sign behind the counter and sun-bleached posters for movies no one had rented in years. It wasn't glamorous, but it was better than mopping gum off cinema floors or hauling shopping carts in 100-degree heat. And honestly, for a kid like me, awkward, quiet, mostly invisible, it was perfect. Nothing much ever happened. The occasional stoner tried to rent softcore after hours. Some sweaty guy always asked when showgirls would be back in stock, even though we hadn't carried it in months. Weird, sure. Creepy sometimes. But never anything truly strange. Until that night. It was 2 days before New Year's, my 10th solo closing shift. Management had finally decided I was responsible enough to lock up on my own. I didn't mind. The customers had mostly disappeared and I liked the peace. I'd sweep, restock returns, maybe sneak a soda from the fridge if no one was around. That night was especially quiet. Too quiet for a Friday. It was 15 minutes before closing when the bell above the door rang. The guy who walked in didn't look like he belonged in a place like this. Tall, pale, sharp around the edges, like someone had drawn him in pencil, not flesh. He wore black slacks, a white shirt, no jacket, no tie. His boots were caked in dry mud, cowboy style, like he'd come from somewhere far away. But what really struck me was how alert he was. His eyes scanned every corner of the store, every shelf, every flickering fluorescent bulb. Then they landed on me, and he smiled. "Evening," he said. His voice was smooth, like he'd practiced sounding friendly. Not warm, just correct. "Hey," I said, already regretting it. He drifted toward the horror section, not browsing, searching. After a few minutes of silence, I asked, looking for something in particular. He didn't answer right away, just tilted his head toward the shelves and said, "My son liked this one." He tapped a copy of The Thing. "And this," he held up Carrie. "Any Christmas recommendations?" That threw me. Christmas," he nodded. "A good one." I blinked. "You ever seen Die Hard?" He smiled again. "Perfect." I grabbed a copy from the display rack and handed it over. He turned it over, scanned the back like he was reading a legal contract, and nodded. "They'll love it," he said, turning on his heel. "Wait, sir, you still need to rent it," I said, chasing him toward the door. He was already outside, climbed into an old black pickup that looked held together by dust and rust. He waved once through the window, then pulled away with a growl of the engine. I stood in the doorway, holding the rental log clipboard like an idiot. Whatever. I figured I'd file a report, write it off, move on. Except I didn't. I left the log blank and closed up shop. No one needed to know. Right? The next night was busier, people rushing in with kids, looking for last-minute entertainment before New Year's parties. I was elbow-deep in a stack of late returns when the drop box clattered. I bent down, expecting Die Hard. It was. Sort of. Same case, same sleeve. But inside, not the right tape. No label, no studio markings, just a blank black VHS, scratched and dusty. We got blank tapes sometimes. People recorded over things, mixed up cases, no big deal. But something about this one made me hesitate. It felt cold. I don't know how else to describe it. Still, I had work to do. I popped it into the counter display player without thinking, just to see what was on it before I shelved it. The screen stayed black for a long second, then static, then a room. Dark, grainy, almost monochrome. The camera never moved, like it had been bolted in place. In the center of the frame, under a bare hanging bulb, was a girl. She sat in a wooden rocking chair, slowly rocking back and forth. Her hair was tangled, her face half hidden. She looked about 12, maybe 13. Pale, expressionless. She didn't blink. At first, no one noticed. But a woman near the kids' aisle gasped. What is that?" she said. A guy browsing sci-fi looked up. Jesus, what the hell? I ran around the counter to see what was playing. She was still rocking, still staring past the camera. Then she stood, walked a slow, shuffling loop around the chair, then sat back down. There was no sound, no music, just the low hum of tape hiss. I yanked the tape out and shoved in Home Alone 2 as fast as I could. "You should take that to the police," someone muttered. "Nah, probably just kids messing around," said another. "If that's your tape," said a college guy, "you need help." I didn't answer. I took it home. I know how that sounds, but I had to know. Curiosity doesn't care about fear. That night I watched it twice. First, just straight through. Then again, slow, trying to catch every detail. There were exactly 13 minutes of footage. It cut in and out between scenes from Die Hard, like someone had taped over it without fully erasing the original. The girl never left the frame for long. She circled the chair. She sat. Sometimes she just stared down at her hands. At one point, she began to whisper something barely audible. There was never another person on screen. No visible doors, just cinder block walls and concrete floor. A single swinging bulb. In the final 10 seconds, she looked up, directly into the lens. I froze it there. She wasn't crying. She didn't look scared. She looked angry, eyes locked onto mine like she knew I was watching, like she hated me for it. I rewound the tape, maxed the volume. There was a voice, faint, off camera. A child's voice. It sounded like, "Save her." I didn't sleep. The man came back the next night, December 31st. Again, right before close. This time he wore jeans and a plain white t-shirt. His boots were still muddy. He didn't browse, just walked straight to the counter. "I think my son returned the wrong tape," he said. "One of my personal copies. I was wondering if you still had it." My throat tightened. Yeah, actually, I kept it behind the counter. I didn't know how to get in touch." He nodded, slow. "Appreciated." I hesitated. "I could set you up with an account if you want. That way, if anything else gets—" "No need," he said, cutting me off. "They've lost their movie privileges for the foreseeable future." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You didn't watch it, did you?" I hesitated. "No." "Good." He placed Die Hard on the counter, sliding it toward me like a peace offering. I reached under the counter and pulled out the blank tape. My hands were sweating. He took it gently, turned it in his fingers, then looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "I hope so." I don't know what that meant. I still don't. He left without another word. I never saw him again. I never told anyone. Not until now. But that's not the worst part. The tape I gave him, it wasn't the original. I made a copy. The original is in that box in the basement, wrapped in plastic, sealed in silence. Sometimes I think about smashing it, burning it, throwing it in the river. But I can't, because once in a while when the house is quiet, I go down there. I open the box, and I look at her face, and I swear, she looks a little older every time. This happened about 10 months ago, in late September. I live in a quiet inland suburb just outside of Richmond, Virginia. It's a modest area, middle-income families, aging homes, a blend of retirees and younger couples starting families. I've lived here almost my whole life. I went to Henrico High, graduated from the nearby state college, and even did my internship at a small real estate office downtown. I know these streets like the back of my hand. By that time last year, I'd been living alone for about 18 months. I had just moved into a small, cozy 2-bedroom duplex that sat near the edge of town, right where the streetlights give way to black woods and long stretches of 2-lane road. The neighborhood was quiet. Not much crime. Good neighbors. Most houses had porches with pumpkins and autumn wreaths by then. It felt safe. Every evening after work, I ran. It became a ritual. I didn't like gyms. They felt too mechanical, too claustrophobic. Instead, I ran the side streets and occasionally took Route 19 west for a couple of miles and doubled back. That stretch of road cuts through low brush, patches of forest and farmland. Barely any cars, no street lamps, just the steady hum of crickets and the distant barking of farm dogs. That particular week, I'd been sick. Nothing too serious, just a nasty sinus infection. I took a few days off and spent most of it sprawled on the couch, watching bad Netflix shows and sleeping in strange positions. I felt like garbage until Thursday, when my energy started to return. By Friday afternoon, I felt fully myself again. Groggy but charged up, like my body was begging to burn off the inactivity. So I threw on my running shoes, chugged an energy drink, grabbed my phone and earbuds, and headed out around 7:45 p.m. It was already dark. Now I've run that route after sunset dozens of times before. I know the curves, the cracks in the sidewalk, the one tree stump that sticks out from someone's lawn. I never felt unsafe. And I didn't this time either, at first. I jogged through my neighborhood, took the right onto Hemsworth Lane, then the hard left that drops you down onto Route 19. It was that warm, humid kind of September night where the air feels thick but just cool enough to keep you moving. I had my music up and my pace steady. I was feeling good. I'd made it about a mile and a half down Route 19 when I saw the first sign that something was off. A truck passed me from behind. Nothing unusual there, but it slowed a little too much as it went by. One of those older Chevy pickups, dirty white paint, rust spots under the doors. Its right headlight was out, which made it instantly memorable. The truck coasted by, paused like the driver was watching me through the mirror, then sped up again. I assumed it was just some bored guy heading home, maybe curious about why someone was out running this late. Still, it got my attention. I kept going. I rounded the bend where the telephone poles disappear and the shoulder narrows. That's where the trees grow thicker on both sides, with barely any visibility beyond the road. I made a mental note to turn around soon. Another few minutes went by and I saw headlights behind me again. Single beam. The same truck. Now it was coming slowly. Real slow. Crawling. I moved to the far edge of the shoulder and stopped jogging, letting it pass. I turned the volume down on my music and pretended to stretch. The truck inched by me, then kept going. No brake lights this time. It just disappeared around the bend. Okay, I thought. Time to head back. I turned and started jogging back toward town. I glanced over my shoulder every 30 seconds, half expecting to see that dim, one-eyed truck pulling a U-turn somewhere in the distance. For a while, nothing happened. I made it maybe 3/4 of a mile back. I was just starting to feel stupid for being paranoid when I heard it again. An engine. Fast this time. I turned, and there it was, barreling toward me, too fast for a dark road, one headlight shaking with the suspension. I barely had time to react. I leapt off the road and into the shallow ditch along the side, just as the truck screamed past, maybe 2 feet from my hip. My ankle twisted a little when I landed, but I stayed upright. The truck skidded to a stop about 50 yards up the road, engine rumbling, brake lights glaring like the eyes of some predator in the dark. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I saw the door open. A man stepped out. He was tall, at least 6 feet 3 inches, and wide like he did hard labor. He had long grayish hair pulled back under a greasy ball cap. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could feel it watching me. He held something in his left hand. I couldn't tell what. He didn't yell anything. He just took one slow step forward. I didn't wait. I tore through the ditch and up the embankment into the woods. Branches smacked my arms and face. My legs sank into soft earth and tangled roots. But I didn't stop. I just kept pushing deeper, away from the road, praying I wasn't running in circles. Behind me, I could hear the sound of boots crashing into the brush. He was following. I zigzagged, trying to lose him. My breath was getting short. The pain in my ankle flared every time I landed on it. Wrong. Eventually, I broke through a thicket and stumbled into a clearing. A power line cut through that ran behind some old barns on the far side of Route 19. I crouched in the tall grass, gasping, trying not to sob. I waited, listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no voice, no sound of him crashing through after me. Was he still back there, or had he circled? I pulled out my phone. No signal. Of course, I waited a full 5 minutes before moving again, taking slow, careful steps. I crept along the edge of the clearing until I saw the back of one of the barns. It looked abandoned, but maybe I could get inside, hide until I figured something out. I pushed the side door open, barely hanging on its hinges, and slipped inside. The inside reeked of mildew and rot. Old tools and farming gear were scattered across the dirt floor. I ducked behind a large overturned wheelbarrow and sat down hard, holding my breath. A few minutes passed. Then I heard it. The sound of tires on gravel. Slow. Crunching. The truck. Somehow he'd circled ahead. The truck came into view through the slats in the barn wall. It crept down a gravel driveway I hadn't even noticed, headlights off now. The engine was barely audible. It rolled to a stop maybe 50 feet from the barn. I saw the driver's door open again. This time he was holding something else, a flashlight, and what looked like a hatchet. He moved methodically, checked the surrounding brush, walked toward the barn, my barn. I didn't breathe, I didn't blink. He got 10 feet away. Then 5. Then, suddenly, his head snapped toward the woods. A sound, a rustle, maybe an animal. Whatever it was, it pulled his attention. He turned and started toward it, slowly disappearing into the trees again. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I bolted. I sprinted out the opposite side of the barn, following the slope downhill, hopping a rusted fence and landing hard on a gravel road that curved away into farmland. I didn't know where it led. I didn't care. I just ran. Eventually, the road met pavement again. A small gas station about a mile out of town, closed but with lights and cameras. I collapsed against the vending machines out front and called 911. The cops arrived about 10 minutes later. I gave a full report. They searched the area, found the barn, found tire tracks, but no truck, no man, no tools, nothing. They never found him, or at least they never told me if they did. I moved 2 months later, found a place in town with street lights, neighbors, and zero access to dark wooded highways. I still run, but not at night, and never on Route 19. If you're anywhere near the Richmond area, especially near those stretches of road where your phone has no bars, keep your eyes open. Watch for a dirty white Chevy pickup with one headlight, and if you see it, don't wait for the door to open. Run.